Coming to you from a portable microphone, this is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast, and I'm very excited to do this. And for all of you graphic designers, interactive designers, identity designers, just designers in the world, this one's for you. I haven't listened to this yet because we haven't recorded it, but I'm excited for a change of pace to get out of advertising agencies and into the design world. I think that at some point, everyone listening to this and everyone that was sitting in the forum today, whether you're a copywriter, designer, or art director, you're going to be working with or doing graphic design, identity, naming projects. At some point in your career, it's going to happen. And as much as we think that there's similarities, there are similarities, but every time I see a designer's portfolio and every time I see a designer present at forum, I'm inspired just by this sheer raw talent and ability to solve something visually that I would never have come up with the idea. I'm pretty confident as a writer, but when I see the way designers, and today specifically Jeff, solve some of these design problems, I was just inspired and awed at how something complex and emotional can be simplified, even though I know that it's a complex and messy process. So it was a really great presentation today, and I know that I'm sorry, all you listeners that are out there, the thousands of people who didn't have the opportunity to hear our speaker. You're going to get to hear a little bit from him now, but the presentation that he showed, he walked through some case studies today, and it was inspiring for me. Jeff Perky is the owner and art director, I guess you're creative director, founder at Perky Bros. I'm going to read really quick, because you probably haven't done your homework on the other end of this. You just started listening to this without reading anything. I'm going to read this verbatim off the website. And Jeff, jump in if this isn't accurate or you don't like how this is reading. Established in 1883 and 2009, Perky Brothers now exists to help brands gain clarity, value, and distinction through design. We create visual identities, websites, packaging, print materials, and any odd or end necessary to create an authentic experience. Working with startups to more established brands, we like to keep our approach flexible. Regardless of what we're tackling, we strive to offer solutions built on plain-spoken, ambitious ideas, always grounded in research and meticulously crafted in their execution. Perky Brothers calls Nashville, Tennessee home. Jeff started that in 2009. Prior to that, he had freelanced with some clients out of New York, because before that, he'd spent 5 years as an account executive at a place called Archer Malmo. He graduated from University of Tennessee in 2001. Then he got a master's in business marketing, and he went to Parsons School of Design in New York, where he graduated in 2007 as a designer. And it's just, we had a great lunch. I've known Jeff now for a good solid hour. I'm hoping that the next half hour is going to be as enlightening as the last hour has been. Just want to say thank you so much for coming down to Atlanta. Thank you for looking at portfolios and speaking to the group today, and welcome to the microphone.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
The first thing I thought when I was looking at your background yesterday was the 9 years that you've been on your own doing this. And I guess we'll kind of work a little bit out of order here, but how have things changed in design and in the business and the kind of problems that clients are coming to you to solve? Or have things in identity, the kind of solutions you're doing, sort of remained sort of the same kind of problems that you saw 9 years ago? How has the industry evolved?
I don't think that the problems have changed really at all that much, at least from, the clients that are approaching me, for work, or the clients that I'm working with. The problems seem to be the same. I think that maybe, one of the things that I've seen from a very tactical, perspective is that, that people's appreciation for design has changed, where they see more of it. We're more immersed in culture, where we've got things like Pinterest. I mean, 10 years ago, nobody was saying like, hey, I've got a new brand I'm trying to build, and I've got a Pinterest board built for it. You were talking about visuals verbally, you can say like how it should feel, and how it could be. So for better or for worse, visuals as a designer have become like much more into the vocabulary of how people communicate about branding, and they see it, that's why most people say like, oh, that's their brand. And they look at that logo, or whatever. And I think that has a lot to do with it. as a piece of design. So
has that been a good, do you find that that's been a good thing working with clients, or that's been a frustrating thing?
No, the short answer is yes. I think originally I was very hesitant when somebody would say like, and I think it's my own ego, but I was very hesitant when somebody came up to me and they said, hey, I've got this Pinterest board. Are you interested in it? And like, I'm the designer, and me said, no, I'm not, interested in your Pinterest board.
Right.
But
no, because what I'm saying is like they might know enough to be dangerous,
yeah. But what I decided to do is treat them with a little bit of respect, and say like, let's take a look at it and let's see, like, because it's not just that they have a pin.
It's a place you can mine their desires in a way.
Absolutely. So I want to know why they select imagery versus what the image looks like. I mean, it may be about color palette, or you see a general trend in their personal preferences. But if you do the work and you do a competitive audit and you understand what the industry is and you understand kind of like how you can use design to differentiate yourself or speak more clearly, you could tell them that, obviously with branding, personal preference doesn't have a lot to do with it, although it always plays a role. Mm-hmm. If it's a small startup with one person, it's hard to get outside of personal preference. But our job as identity designers, or designers in general, is try to make the decision as objective as possible versus subjective. Like I had a client once, this is a true story, it's one of my first branding clients. It went awfully. I quit after, I don't know, maybe 10 different versions or something. Okay. I was trying to learn. But she said, ultimately she didn't like the shape of, she didn't like the circles as a shape,
God.
Yeah. And so she said she wouldn't even put a round coffee table in her house. And that was true. And we got to that level of weeds, talking about things and talking about visuals. But all that to say is my experience with things of like client sharing, digital, research and based on design has actually been really, really good.
Would you think that would have been really, really good when you were younger, or would you have been a little bit put off by it?
I don't know if I would have taken the time as much to understand the why and realizing the importance and the context of just like, I've got experience now, so I know how to dig and ask the better questions. Maybe not always the right questions, but I think I can ask better questions to kind of inform myself, or at least have a dialogue to talk about design, color theory, tell them the reasons, try to understand the reason why a color is speaking to somebody, or try to understand the reason why they feel like minimalism should be an aspect of this project. Is it just because they feel like it's technology and technology should be minimal, or is it because that's what the brand is and they're existing in an industry of complexity?
That's really interesting.
So we just try to dig a little bit there and talk about these visuals and really get to the underlying reason about why they pulled them.
It's interesting. So I'm going to ask you a question that's going to sound really ignorant, because I will say that I'm admittedly relatively ignorant when it comes to creative strategy with regards to design, and especially for identity design. And you're the second speaker who's come. Sharon Werner was another one who came, who's done some beautiful package design and talked about the process of developing strategy and the language around what you're going to design. And the way that you presented your case studies today, you had a list of adjectives that were, I guess you were talking about a competitive audit. Mm-hmm. So these are the kind of things that we're seeing, the cliches, the tendencies, the sort of tropes that are familiar in this category. Then you would have a second set of adjectives that were what we want our communication to convey. So it's as disparate as simplicity and edgy, or whatever these words are. So when you're sitting down to work, do you literally pin those words up as you're thinking? Do you internalize the thought that you're going for? You kind of make this soup in your mind and create out of that. How does the process of a creative direction change for you? Now, before you answer, I just want to explain how it differs from an advertising strategy, from where I come from as a copywriter, where the advertising strategy is very simply what we're trying to say. Here is the sentence. Here's what we want to say. Use this and you'll be more confident. So now as a writer, I'm just thinking about, okay, how can we think about confidence? How can we convey confidence? Is it a metaphor? Is it a scenario where somebody's doing things beyond what they're able to do? Is this a scenario where somebody somehow radically changes? Is this just a language-based execution? But it's always saying the same exact thing, different ways. Whereas I feel like the design one is you're saying 6 or 7 different things one way. So does that make sense? Because you're looking at me you're either listening to me and following me, or you're like, think I'm crazy.
I think I'm tracking. No, I definitely understand the idea of like, what's the message you want to get across in this particular communication. But what we're building is a system, with nuances, and we're building, and the identity, carries that. So just like a personality, there's certain times where you're more expressive and there's certain times where you're more subtle. And it's important to know which levers to pull at certain points within a given design system.
Right, and how that who wins the hierarchy and how the hierarchy is balanced.
Yeah, exactly. So the balance and the juxtaposition between the two, like when you meet with a client, when they're talking about branding, it's like, you try to describe yourself as a person because it's a it's a context that people understand. I had this one client very early on that said, like, I want all my stuff to look like we're all going to a party and we look like we're going to the same party. And that sounds really elementary and kind of silly, but it is sort of true. The cohesive nature about something that they mesh personality-wise, they like each other, and stuff like that. So it always kind of resonated with me of a way to dumb it down and think about it, but not just the consistency, but people you'd like to hang out with. And in today's age, with developing these systems, the nuances and kind of the authenticity a lot of times comes from brands that are imperfect, and that's why we use an illustration a lot, or we use, things that are organic or expressive. I don't know, I could describe a lot of adjectives, but we're trying to make brands feel more human and more accessible, more approachable versus like, here's your logo, here's your palette, here's your typography. This is the one thing that you communicate. But I guess when people come to me, they say, here's your list of adjectives that we want to communicate. Usually it's a mile long. It's everything to everybody. And so we still try to distill that down, and we're saying, like, you can't pull every lever.
Right. So what's the sweet spot?
Which ones do we want to pull to help you resonate? Let's pick 2 or 3, and those are going to be our, bigger levers to pull. And a lot of that comes through and is decided through, one, what do they want to communicate as far as, like, the brand attributes they want to elevate and communicate, and then 2, giving the competitive context, what can speak the loudest.
That's interesting.
Or the clearest.
It's interesting. They were talking about sort of authenticity and things aren't being perfect or whatever. It's like, I just noticed this last week, the Timberland logo is almost intentionally awkwardly imperfect. And I think that it's sort of, it has grounded, but it's also sort of looks like you want to mess it up, which kind of feels like, it kind of feels like it's been used. It's almost like a worn leather in the actual design. So back to the other question I was asking. So when you're sitting down, and I'm talking to you not as a shop owner, but as a pure designer, are you saying, okay, let's think about this word and see what that means? Or are you thinking about how the combination as you're designing, and how does the process sort of work?
Usually it's a combination. We do think about those attributes individually, but it is a collection. And I think the combination is most important part, because you're talking about mixing opposites a lot of times. So, if something's really minimal, maybe you make it more expressive in the tone of voice to kind of make it feel like there's a tension between the two. Right. So people use the word disruption a lot now, of a certain idea. That's what makes an idea not feel like a cliche. That mix of opposites. It feels like something new, that 1 + 1 = 3, type mentality. So I think, there's nothing wrong with cliches. That's good because everybody knows them and they're easy to communicate because people get it right away. But if you're trying to do something that's, a little bit, more unique, a lot of times we'll come up with a phrase, like, understated luxury or something like that, right. That can kind of be the muser, the influence, the design on a project. So, those two kind of polar opposite ends of the spectrum, can kind of relate and collide.
Very cool. You'd said in your presentation that oftentimes it's about the people, not the project. What makes a good client or a good design partnership with someone who you're working for?
Probably a lot of different things. I mean, it could be anything from as simple as money, to be honest.
Meaning that they're giving you the time that you need to do something well, or what does that mean? What does money mean?
No, just like a profitable project. You got a better budget to work within. You get to spend more time. Somebody told me early on, or I listened to a podcast and I heard it, but it was the 3 F's, about how to take a project. And it was, what was it? I hope I don't botch it, but it was fortune, fame, or fun. Typically you want 2 of those.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
I've always talked about that in my
Yeah.
class. Yeah,
And
I haven't
that's
used those words. That's a better way to say it. I think of it as you want nice people, award-winning work, or a lot of money. You need two of those things.
Yeah, it's the same thing, but and you need two of those things, and it's a good way for us to look at projects.
It's tough to do fortune and fame and work with assholes, but at the beginning of your career, it's not a bad move.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. And I took about everything that came in, early on, and we still say yes to a lot more than we probably should. But I think, the one thing that I've noticed is that, good things is that clients that understand, the creative process, you don't have to educate them on it so much about,
How much do you feel like you've had to do that through your career?
Not as much anymore, but yeah, I still do quite a bit. I mean, specifically when it comes down to project management issues, like how long should something take? Mm-hmm. And you try to explain, this isn't building a widget.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take you that long to draw it. What, you've been a week to draw that?
Yeah.
No, I've been drawing that since I was 12.
That's exactly. I love that line. That's a good one. That's true.
Yeah.
So I feel like that, sort of thing still comes up is it's taking a long time, but it's less so as most of the clients we have want good work, but they're under constraints as like anybody else. They're ready for their business to start. They need to put a sign up. Like, where's the logo, dude? And they're ready to put the stuff into action. So, we look at it from that perspective as well. But I think, the understanding of the creating process is really great. I think it's also, I've got clients that I do that are drier, but we still do outstanding work for them that are more in finance or healthcare. But the one common trait about those particular clients is, one, they're ambitious from a design perspective. They do feel like design is a tool that can help differentiate them, not just a means like we need a logo. And then the second thing is they understand that we're experts, and they're like, they'll fight and they'll bring up their opinion because they're smart people and they have opinions. But if it comes down to it, they'll understand. Yes, they'll understand reasoning, or they'll at least hear you and they'll tell you why it doesn't work. And that's all I need. That's the only frustrating thing is people give me a reason, I don't agree with it, and they can't give me a why. It's just more of a
it's a gut feeling I have. I just don't like it.
Nothing wrong with gut feeling. I use them a lot during the process, but it's hard to hear when you feel you're right, or something.
Yeah, how do you do it? That right there is one of the hardest things I've ever had to figure out how to handle as a creative. Is that when I know in my belly that I'm right. The thing that I guess I didn't realize when I was younger is that there's a lot of ways you can be right. You can be right a different way that they like.
Yeah,
that was a tough one for me.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of, we talk about that a lot. There's the idea, and there's a lot of different ways to execute it. Is it that he doesn't like your idea, or he just doesn't like your execution? Maybe you take a step back.
Well, that's a great point. That's a really good point. I think young people can't distinguish between the difference between an idea and execution, because the thing that they made is the idea. It's like, well, let's kind of tear it apart a little bit and think about what you're actually saying, and maybe say it or show it a different way. Mm-hmm. So changing the subjects radically. If you were just given, like, on the way back tonight, when you got home tonight, you had to do one of three things. How would you rank if you had to do a logo, a package design, or a website? What's the most exciting one for you to work on? What do you like to work on?
Oh, geez, it definitely wouldn't be the website.
Why?
I don't know. It's because that I know that the less I practice websites, we do smaller sites and we do some e-commerce sites for shops, and we do like smaller brochure-based sites. But I see the work that some great web people do, and my taste level is up here and my execution,
your ability level below that. Yeah.
So I even know that I'm out of practice with like what's right. So or what's capable, and it's like I have a learning curve every time because that industry moves so quickly. So
good point.
But I still like doing it and flexing that muscle. We still do information architecture, site maps, and wireframes, and all that stuff. And it's good, to do because it does flex a different muscle. But I love if it was a logo design or a package, that'd be a tough one. Probably the logo design, because I'd want to create,
because it would eventually be on the package.
Yeah.
If you're doing a package, someone's giving you the logo.
Yeah, if I started with the package, I would be like, what's this brand all about? Right. And how do we use it? So it's not just, a design project, but it's got a foundation that I understand what we're building off of.
So in a way, your ideal client, you answered the question perfectly, but your ideal client would also be somebody who has a business that hasn't really launched, right? So you really want to be part of the initial expression of a brand, the initial sort of visual positioning?
I think that's nice. I don't know if I have a preference for a redesign, or that. I feel like as long as the redesign is in the right place and there's like good company alignment, that it needs to happen. Because we've been a part of redesigns that are nightmares where, people will have certain expectations, especially like, more bigger marketing departments are like, we just feel old and stale. Let's whip up something new. And there's usually one or two people that are the designer or the marketing team wants new stuff. And then you also have, maybe one other person that's championing the project. And then everybody else at the company is like, I miss our old stuff, so, but that's not internal alignment. So sometimes there's more complications to that, but each project has its own challenges. I love building all stuff that's currently in existence and then just reappropriating and making it better. I think that's a challenge too. Like sometimes the people come to us and they just don't even have a system. You know what I mean? Like, or the logo somebody built from a long time ago isn't useful in digital, and they've tried to use it different ways, but they just don't have a palette and they've grown.
That's something I'll think about on your current assignments and like even the beer or the January moon stuff. Are you thinking about how things are going to be used in social, used on apparel, or used on anything that? We were talking before recorded. Listeners don't know this. We were talking about the design of the Atlanta United logo and the Major League Soccer kits is done by Adidas, and some of those things look really cool up close, but they don't look so good from the stands or on television. And is that something that's you're cognizant of as you're developing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all part of the process. We try to, I use the word touch points a lot. It's every place that brand touches, and like how it's going to be used or what it's going to say and what can we use with design to kind of influence that or make it something remarkable. Because at the end of the day, I understand that nobody goes home to their friend and says like, oh, that logo of that restaurant was amazing, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but the restaurant's the amazing one. That's the one I was thinking of. That's the one you obviously did what we're talking about. And I forgot the name of the restaurant.
Oh, Common Lot.
Right, Common Lot. But this is such a cool little device with the. So for the listeners that don't know, the Common Lot is a restaurant in New Jersey that Perky Brothers did the ID for, and the menu and the name and the logo mark has these 3 O's. Common has 2 O's and Lot has an O, and they're equidistant. And they look like plates at a table, and they're modular. So some of the stuff that you guys came up with, which I thought was so cool, the animated, the moving, and then there's a sense of motion through all the work. And I can only imagine the moment when someone realized, I don't know, probably you or one of your other designers realized that, hey, wait a minute, this could be something. Right? This could be something outside of just the mark or the signage. Right? That's a cool moment.
Yeah, I patted myself on the back. I tore my rotator cuff. Patting myself.
No, that's really cool.
No, that is great. I mean, but I understand that like most of the time, when we talk about remarkable impressions, it's usually like, the way the bellboy greets you at a hotel and what they say that ultimately tells your friends like this place is remarkable. It's nice. You should go there. And it's not lost on me that, the logo is a vehicle just to be, simple, something that's easy to recognize and, recall. But it's ultimately like really usable. So we like to create identity systems that no matter what reflects that brand's personality, even if the logo's not there. So it could be a particular quirky typeface that if they see, or the tone of voice or something like that, that's what you're ultimately striving for. You cover up the logo and you say, that's a Common Lot Instagram thing.
Yeah, the strongest brands do that without you realizing that you're even experiencing it. Just the typeface on the Nintendo user interface just feels like Nintendo. It feels fun. I mean, Amazon is another one that's a really good example. Everything kind of feels of its brand. Apple, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what, this is a strange question you might not have an answer to. What's a new category that you've never worked in that you would just be so excited to jump into that's something that you kind of would fantasy type of project?
Okay, I have one passion project that we started working on currently, so it's not necessarily new, but it's totally my bag. So we've gotten the opportunity to work with Auburn's Rule Studio, which is a architecture program that's kind of different at Auburn University. They've invented their basically initiative is to build affordable, sustainable housing in rural areas of Alabama.
Interesting.
And so they operate.
Is that redundant? Sorry.
What's that?
Rural Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
That's good. So anyway, it's a student program in their architecture school where they go out to, Hale County and build these, homes for, they've invented this thing called the 20K house.
Cool.
Where they're all pretty bare bones, but they are very creative in terms of how they use materials to be as efficient as possible. I mean, they use, timber from around the area versus some kind of odd, material that might be cooler from an architectural perspective. But so it's very sensible. It's very economical, but it's very creative. I mean, you're in these rural like environments, and you see these very modern functional designs like right in the middle of it. And to me, that kind of grassroots approach and doing things, but also carrying design through, and again, the collide of opposites in Hale County.
Is that graphic design, or is there other kind of design going on that you're working on?
Oh, well, so we did like an internal annual report for them last year for students and people that are interested in the program, and hopefully that relationship continues. But I would really love to help them, work more on like their marketing the 20K house, offering that to, people outside of the ones they choose to build it for in Hale County. Like, how can they package this project and make it useful around around the country or world? Really cool. Obviously it's something that people talk about more with more efficient, living. It's just an area that really interests me. And when I got the call to work with them, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening.
That's cool.
So hopefully that becomes more and we get more involved. Right now we're kind of on the outside looking in, but that would be a dream project that actually might happen. So I hope it does.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So another strange question. So the listeners have noticed that you have a bit of a Western Tennessee accent.
No.
A little bit. Do you feel like that's, since you have clients in New Jersey and you were in New York, is that something that's come up? Has it been a good thing or an impediment? Do you think it has affected any part of your professional life?
That's a good question. Probably. I don't know. I don't think so. If somebody judges me that quickly, that's fine. I think it's probably the contrast has maybe helped more than it's hurt. My last name's also Perky. It's not easy to forget. Mm-hmm. So I think when I lived in New York, I tried my best to hide it. All my friends call me Jeff, and in New York, all of a sudden my name changed to Jefferson. It wasn't even really it wasn't even really a formal thing. It's like what the teachers and everybody started calling me, and I said no, just Jeff, and then they said no, it should be Jefferson, and I just let it go.
For the president of the Confederacy,
Jefferson Hall Perky. So it's kind of like
Jefferson Davis, wasn't he the president of the Confederacy? I believe
my full name's Jefferson Hall, and it sounds like a dorm room.
It does,
or something like that, but. No, Jefferson's a family name. So that's the way it's always been that way.
So speaking of family name, tell us real quick about the name of the agency.
Perky Bros.
How do you call it, an agency? I guess a shop.
I just call it a design studio. Yep. But you can call it whatever. It's just as long as you call. Perky Brothers was started by my great-great-grandfather back in the 1880s, and it was a moving and storage company back in Kansas City, Missouri, where my dad grew up. It lasted all the way till the 70s, and when I started Perky Brothers, it was kind of like I just didn't want to call it Jeff Perky Design. I knew I wanted to have a small team, or somebody that I worked with, and I just figured I could fake it until like, hey, the Brotherhood's like all the people I collaborate with, and all this stuff. And
did you agonize over the name?
No, it was simple. It was easy breezy.
That's great.
I liked it, and
that's
went with
excellent. Okay, shifting gears again. Another thing that you had mentioned in the forum, which I thought was, to me personally, one of the best pieces of advice was to seek advice outside your craft. Mm-hmm. Do you have, you mentioned it, but I want to hear it again. Do you have friends, mentors, or just anyone outside of design that you bounce things off of? And how do you stay sort of balanced and not consumed by it?
I could always do it more. I literally, I could always do it more in terms of bouncing ideas. I don't bounce a lot of design off people, but I talk to people a lot that I'm inspired by how they conduct their business and themselves, whether it's salesmen that I think are successful and how they look at things like real estate people. I think they're amazing, like how they, start to develop neighborhoods, and also can appreciate the way that they're like, I don't really love my job. I just like making this money. And to be frank, I need more of that in my life I'm just saying money's not evil, I've got 2 kids in daycare
but you can't, but as a person in a creative communication field, you can't be thinking about the money it's going to make, but because that's not really part of what we have to do, but it's a really good thing to have instilled in you as a person with kids or anyone.
So important. And I think that it just helps you be responsible, especially if you have employees. You can't make a lot of bad decisions and say take things for the love, especially when people want raises.
But if we were money motivated, we wouldn't have chosen these careers. So we need some money motivation instilled into us.
No, I think it's not so much being motivated by money. It's honestly, for me, a check back and saying what would this person person doing this situation, would they take this project or would they not take this project based on the things we have in the studio? So I don't sit there and look like I should be motivated like money like that guy. I just think about how that person would deal. I also use professors from school. I still think about what would Kasha do? How would she react to this idea, or what would she do, for this project? How would my mom solve this problem?
I think it's really great.
That sort of thing. And I think it's just putting yourself and having some, empathy, and putting yourself in different people's shoes and how you think they would react. And I think that influences my business decisions and design decisions more versus like, hey, come take a look at this design. I need your feedback. I don't need a lot of people's feedback on the design.
It gives you another perspective. You mentioned a couple of times the phrase 30,000 feet, where you're kind of outside your own sort of myopic view. I had the most incredible experience last week. My daughter and I went down to the Georgia Capitol. They're in session. The legislature's in session. And we had a session with this guy where this guy talked to us about how to lobby. And there's four things you're supposed to do when you lobby a legislator, which I'd never thought about before, but it made me think so differently about how to sell work, how to be a professional creative. And you were talking about how good a salesperson you are. I think, careers aren't made on the best idea that you have. Careers are made on the best idea that gets made. And the four things are, when you talk to a legislator, number one, start with a fact from a credible source. It's debatable whether anyone's going to agree what a credible source is, but a fact. This is the key part. Number two, appeal to the legislator's values, not your values, not the things you believe in. If you're progressive and you're talking to a conservative legislator, you have to appeal to the conservative value. How does this bill affect their value? Number three, personal story. So make it about a real person that you know, an experience that you've had. And then the fourth one is an unintended consequence. If this bill passes, did you think about the fact that this could affect this some other way? And it was so incredibly interesting to me. And I think that the core part of it for me was number two, which is understanding what's important to the person on the other side of the table. Understanding that clients that we present work to don't care that you love your idea or that your idea is going to win an award, but that they can sell it to their superior, that they can sell it into their sales team, or that it's going to solve the problem that they have, that it either does or doesn't meet the expectation of what they expected it to be, or whatever. So I just thought that was fascinating. And I think that I talked about that all week in my class, because that's not necessarily something that is obviously something that's going to make you a better advertising or design professional, to go to go lobby your congressman. But it was such a life-changing experience for me to just be told very specifically, you're talking to someone who doesn't want necessarily to talk to you. Here's the way to get to them. It's from their side. Really interesting.
Yeah, I just think dealing with rejection, how do you pick yourself off the mat? We talked about sports and things like that, and dealing with adversity. There's going to be a lot of times where your idea doesn't get chosen, or it doesn't turn out exactly the way you thought. Yeah. So, it's not just like, it's not, that's going to happen. That's inevitable, and you're going to feel like shitty, but it's also how you pick yourself up, how you go to approach the next project, how you interact with others about it. You don't bring the whole team down, and then, ultimately you've got to put your best foot forward on the next one. It can't affect you. It's like, what do they say? Like snap and clear in football, and something like it's very true in design or creative industry as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, you said one, and I kind of want to end on the references to your speech with this last one, which is when you said that to take risks as soon as possible when you're younger. And I thought that was great advice. And is that something that you feel that you did? Is that something that you were capable of doing?
Yeah, I think starting a business is a risk,
much, yeah.
And I probably wouldn't, I think twice about it, now I would have to have like certain things in place versus kind of jumping out. Now, I did do it as like conservatively as possible by keeping like retainers and things that kind of kept the money going in and doing the other projects, and that worked for me. But I like to just people, to realize, to just not be scared, and then to realize, there's not a bad thing that could happen if you end back up on your parents' couch, for a little bit. I think ultimately it's different for everybody, and you could be so bold when you're presented with the risk to not listen to people on Twitter and Instagram that are putting out these inspirational, those are all well and great, these things that are more, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that or, name names, but I feel like, you could be so bold as to do a pros and cons list, and say like, can I afford this? How long could it do it? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And most designers I know are really smart, but they may sometimes, or creatives, they may sometimes lack the confidence or the guts to do it.
Yeah.
which a lot of other industries have,
There's a guy that was here last week, a photographer, that said that when you're young, naivete is your best friend. And like sometimes not knowing what you don't know, it's like you would never do the things that you did when you were younger. And the only way to get greatness is to take risks. And I wish I'd taken more risk when I was younger, because this part of the conversation is bumming me out. No, I'm kidding. Last question for you that I like to ask people in your position is, what personal trait of yours, what do you think it is about Jeff that has served you well or best so far in your career?
That's good. I think the two things that come up, or at least I hear, let me think. That is a good question.
You can think about it for a
second. It's hard to think. I think one, I think I have a good, and I didn't realize this was specific to me, or some people don't have it, but I do think I can exercise a good amount of empathy, for others, and I think that's important with the design. I do think about it from different perspectives. I can't help it. Sometimes I do it too much, and I need to just, have my own, point of view about it, and do it like I think it wears on me too much, So I think that's one thing that helps me relate to clients, in a way, and understand where they're coming from.
Interesting.
And I think the second is, and this is probably not normal, but from creatives, or design in general, is because it is, I'm pretty competitive, overall. Sometimes I'll be the first to admit this is not healthy. I see competitors' work, go up, and instead of like, hey, great job, I'm like, damn it.
Right.
Why didn't we get that job? Or like, how can we raise our game? So
is it damn it that it was good, or is it damn it that like I could have done better if I'd had it?
Oh, no, it's definitely damn that was good, and like, how do we get that? I don't always know if I could do better. I would like to say so, but like, I mostly think like, why didn't I get that job? Or like, why are we, right. And it motivates me. If somebody gets, but it is good. I know what it is, and I know that it's healthy or not healthy, but I do think a competitive spirit, even within the studio. So it is all collaborative, and we all love each other and like working with each other. I mean, I like everybody that I work with, and they wouldn't be there every day, but, when we all present, we all take a different direction or something like that. It's kind of competitive.
That's really cool.
When somebody picks one, I roll my chair back and I look at everybody else and I'm like, suck on that!
I dropped the mic.
Or whatever, and I'm still doing that. And I was like, so I'm saying like, old guy still got it,
That's awesome.
But, and they're the same way, about that. They're probably not as, they don't rub it in my face as much.
Yeah, that's smart.
But they should, because I give it to them.
That's pretty cool. Well, I have all the faith and all the belief that you're going to continue to succeed and grow, and I hope that you grow in a way that's comfortable and the way that you want it to, and I hope you get more great stuff and awesome clients coming for more beautiful, elegant, and intelligent problem-solving work. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, if you want to get a hold of Jeff, he's been kind enough to give out a fake email address. No, I'm kidding. It's jeff@perkybros.com. Jeff is spelled the traditional way. Perky Bros is spelled like Mario Bros. But Perky. You can reach me, as always, at Dan's Podcast at mac.com. Make sure you like the Facebook page at facebook.com/DGMS podcast. And you can check out Perky Brothers at perkybros.com and leave a review at the iTunes store if you're so inclined. I'm trying to do this really well, really hard for you. It's free, so the least you can do is just go in there and give me some stars. I'm begging, I'm groveling to my listeners. Thank you for listening this far into the ending. Appreciate that very much. Jeff, thanks again, man.
Thank you.
Listeners, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Till then, bye.
Dude, you knocked that out. That was amazing. You're like, you don't have to do the intro and stuff later. You just nailed it. Great work.